Good evening, everyone, and thank you for being here for the Maddie's Institute webcast, Assessing Your Community to Save More Animals' Lives. I'm Lynn Fridley, Program Manager for Maddie's Institute. We're all very excited to bring you the valuable information in this webcast. Our presenter is Bonnie Brown, President and Founder of Humane Network. Humane Network works with animal welfare organizations across the U.S. to dramatically improve live release rates for dogs and cats entering shelters by employing sustainable, responsible life-saving strategies. Many of you will know Bonnie from her years as the Executive Director of Nevada Humane Society in Reno, Nevada. Because of her innovative programs, she increased adoption rates by 53% for dogs and 84% for cats in the first year. And from 2010 through 2013, Washoe County realized a 94% save rate for animals coming into the area shelters, making it one of the safest communities in the country for homeless pets. Before we get started, we have some housekeeping items to discuss. Please take a look at the left side of your screen where you'll see a Q&A window. That's where you'll ask questions during the presentation. Bonnie will answer as many of the questions as she can at the end, but please don't hold your questions until then. Questions asked in the last few minutes will probably not be processed in time for our response. If you need help with your connection during the presentation, you can click on the help icon at the bottom of your screen. You'll also see other little images at the bottom of your screen along with the help button. These are widgets that will take you to the resources that we wanted to share with you. The green file widget also contains a printable certificate of attendance for people attending this live event, with no quiz necessary. Be sure to fill out the evaluation survey after the event. Before I turn things over to Bonnie, I wanted to say a few words about Maddie's Fund. We are the nation's leading funder of shelter medicine education, and it is our goal to help save the lives of all of our nation's healthy and treatable shelter dogs and cats. Our founders, Dave and Cheryl Duffield, were going through a difficult time in their life, but they were sustained by the unconditional love of their little dog named Maddie. She gave them such joy that they promised her that if they ever made any money, they would give back to her kind. Their dreams did come true, and they made good on their promise by creating Maddie's Fund in honor of their cherished companion and the special bond that they shared. Please use what you learn here tonight to continue your life-saving work for animals. Bonnie, thank you for being here this evening.
Thank you so much, Lynn. I'm really honored to be here with Maddie's Institute and with all of you who joined us this evening. And I'm going to start right into things. In fact, the first place that I'm going to start is talking about how we all got involved in this. And for most of us, it really starts with a place in our hearts and empathy that we feel for animals, especially animals that find themselves in shelters, and for the animals that are, in many cases, in the greatest need of help in order to pass through the shelter and come out the front door to live a full life. So coming from that perspective, it's an important one for sure, and clearly if all we did was focus on helping individual animals to find that next step in their life, that would be very worthy and very essential work. And just focusing on that, we could save lots of animals. But in addition to that, if we can focus, at least some of us, on the underlying issues that our animals are facing and provide some life-saving alternatives, we're ultimately going to be able to solve the problem in a community-wide way, in a lasting way, that will provide a sustainable solution to the challenges that animals face. And this is going to require more than our heartfelt feelings for them, and even more than all the hard work we put in. It's really going to require some focused thinking. And so my goal is to help walk you through a method or a process that you can hopefully employ that will make this more effective and less painful for you as you proceed. I think we're all familiar with the various programs that have led to success in many communities, but the challenge often comes in getting the programs implemented in our own community. Resources can be limited, and while you can always gather more resources, having the information at your disposal so that you can share with others the potential and the potential expected results that you can obtain can really give you the edge you need when you're seeking funding and trying to get buy-in from others, be they officials or others who you need to convince in order to achieve your goals. So with the animals counting on us, and as they are, it's really incumbent on us to use resources as wisely as we can. And so this assessment process is really designed to help you achieve that, to create a framework for you that you can hopefully implement and increase the life-saving in your community. So what I'm going to do is step through that. We're going to start with why you would be doing a community assessment, and many of you may already have answers to this, but it's helpful to talk about them because you may have to get others engaged in order to succeed. We're also going to talk about the steps that you will need to go through, what information is needed, how you can get that information, how you could analyze it, and assessing the information so that you can really identify the challenges and opportunities so that you can then go the next step. So we will talk about specific options that you can explore. We'll talk about how you can really create and then implement a plan, because you certainly don't want a plan that sits on a shelf, and how to assess progress and adjust as you go forward. So that's what we're going to cover in the next little bit. The place to start really is why you are considering doing a community assessment. And I'm going to talk in a second about some of the benefits of an assessment, but you also just need to be thinking for yourself, why are you considering this? When you saw the subject for this webinar, something struck you, a reason why you felt you wanted the information, and that's important, and you'll want to hold on to that. Some of the most common benefits that can be obtained through doing a community assessment I have listed for you here, and that's to obtain the best possible use of resources. Where our resources are limited, we really need to be sure we're having the greatest life-saving impact that we possibly can for the animals, and this will help you do that. It's also an opportunity to gather more resources and more support to increase the live release rate for the animals in shelters in your community. And this includes things like funders and foundations, government officials, boards of directors, shelter leadership, the media, and really just the public at large. Also, another benefit is to obtain quicker results by having a strategic focus. And we'll talk more about that as we get to past the analyzing of the statistics and into the implementation. We'll come back to that. And it also can really help with getting buy-in. Just the process can help. But it can help people overcome old ways or limited ways of thinking about things, and it can even help to get reluctant parties on board. So I'm going to let Lynn step back in here.
And this is our first poll question. So those of you in the audience, you can answer this poll question directly on your screen. Don't answer in the Q&A box. If you are considering doing a community assessment, what is the primary reason? To get help, to help get everyone on the same page, to drive change at the large local shelter, to develop a community-wide plan to save more animals, other, or don't know or not applicable. So answer on the screen and press submit. If you're considering doing a community assessment, what is the primary reason? And we'll take a look at the results. If everybody's finished with their poll, let's take a look. Wow. Okay, Bonnie, that's pretty interesting.
That's great. Very exciting. That's wonderful. That's very cool to see that the majority of people are looking to develop a community-wide plan, because I really think that gives you the best opportunity for success. It can be a challenge, and you need as many helping hands as you can get. So let's see where we can what we can do to help you get there. The first key, really, and some of you have just indicated that you've done that, is to really define your desired outcomes. For example, you could be a board member or a staff member, and your organization is looking to better understand the needs of the community so that you can meet them more strategically. Perhaps your organization wants to understand how to take on a leadership role in the development of a community-wide plan. In other cases, people are looking to develop a really effective coalition of organizations. So, think about these things, because you can refine your reason for launching into this process and help to move the entire thing forward. With the greater the clarity you have, the better chance that you're going to succeed in your goals. And of course, concerned citizens may be seeking to see what the local government can do to facilitate more life-saving. So the goal may be to have materials to present to a governmental board. Whatever, just get clear on that. This would really be step one, ensuring that you know what the desired outcome of your community assessment is. Why are you launching into this? Where is it going to go? A frequent question that I get is, does it have to take a long time? And as we go through this, you may initially think that it would, but the truth of the matter is it does not have to take a long time. Depending on the scope of what you're trying to accomplish, you may not have the same full depth of analysis that I'm going to go through here. You can do a down and dirty assessment that can be very effective and get you the information that you need. And so from the information I'm presenting, you may select pieces of it that you think can guide you along the way and get everything pointed in the right direction. And that may be all you need. In other cases, a full-blown assessment might really be important in order to gain buy-in. But one critical fact, no matter how thorough you plan to make your assessment, is you do not have to complete the entire assessment before you begin to take action to improve things for the animals. So you can always be taking steps. You can say attack low-hanging fruit or things that seem like sure bets as interim measures as you move through your assessment. You don't have to wait to take action. But ideally, we'll talk more about this as we go through, but you want to be able to remain flexible in your approaches so that you can adjust as you go. Everything doesn't always work as we plan, and so flexibility is a key component to success. Okay, here we go. We're going to launch into where you start, and one of the most important things is gathering information. And before you gather information, you need to make some decisions, and a critical one is about the geographic area that you're going to focus on. It's really important to define it, whether it is your city, your county, your state, your region, wherever it is. You need a very definite geographic focus. Then you have to think about what data you are going to need. So the amount of information, the kinds of information that you choose to gather is going to be guided by different factors, possibly the size of your community, the number of animals, the scope and nature of the challenges, and, as we already discussed, your goals. So keep that in mind. As I go through these things, don't feel overwhelmed. Realize that you can make decisions about how much data you are going to gather. Now, generally, data that you're going to need is going to include the number of animals, that are entering shelters in enough detail to help you determine what is going to make a substantial impact and what's going to create the best results. So gathering animal statistics is almost a given. That's pretty essential. Also, you're going to want to look at the services that are already available in your community now so that you can see where these results are coming from. What's happening now is a result of what's already available to the public. And you want to gather some basic information about the community. This is really simple to gather some demographic information simply with a Google search. It's very easy to do. And, of course, you're going to want to look at the resources that are available in your community. In addition to the services and programs, we're talking about things like financial assets, those that are already in play, but also opportunities that may exist to add to those resources. So as we are looking at determining what information is needed, this is a great time to consider who else should be involved in the project. And I know committees can have a bad name, but they also have a real function. Maybe task force is a better word, but it may be helpful to try to engage others, certainly others within your organization, but especially those of you who are looking at a community-wide assessment. While it adds to the complexity, there's great value in getting others engaged early on in the process, because then there's going to be more commitment and buy-in into the achievement of the goals, the more engaged people are. So thinking now about who needs to be involved, that would be an important decision for you to be making. Now, gathering the information, you are going to be thinking about where you will gather the information that you need. And so I always like to suggest that as a starting point to ask shelter management. And again, this ties back into who you have as partners in this process, in this assessment process. But really, the best place for relations is to always start by asking, by explaining what you're doing, why you need the information, what you're going to do with it, and getting that level of buy-in in terms of them voluntarily providing information to you. That's best. But there are other ways to obtain information. Much is available on the Internet. You can look at the organization's website, look for their annual reports. There also may be formal shelter assessments that are public information. Often if an organization receives public funds or is a municipal agency, the public information is simply made available, and you would be able to see, for example, their shelter assessments if any have been completed, and that can provide a lot of information for you. Also, public officials are usually willing to help. These are elected officials, and you can work with them to help gain information. And I like to consider it a strategy of last resort, but you can always issue a public information request, a FOIA, Freedom of Information Act request, and get information provided to you. There's also some information available online. Maddie's Fund has information on their website, which can be very helpful in terms of shelter statistics and reporting. And I'll talk about some others later, but one that I like to mention, because people often don't think about it, is actually an opposition group, and it's the National Animal Interest Alliance. And while they have published the data online with intentions that are perhaps different than ours, the information is there. They've already done a lot of legwork, and we may as well use it for what our goals are. And so it's definitely worthwhile to take a look at that website. They have an entire shelter project there. Keep in mind that institutions are different, and the amount of information they're required to share is different. The shelters that are privately funded are going to have different information that they're required to make public. So again, really the place to start is to talk with people and ask them for their buy-in and for their help. So again, talking to shelter leadership is the best way, the first choice of how to gather information. Talking a little bit further about the information that you're going to want to gather, the source of incoming animals is a big and very important issue, and as we talk more you will see why if it's not already apparent to you. But you not only need to know the number of animals coming into the community's shelters, you need to know their source. Are they owner-surrendered pets? Were they picked up in the field? Are these animals transferred in or outside of the area, outside of your designated geographic area? And that really matters because you don't want to be counting animals twice as they're moved between organizations. Next, you're going to need to know the disposition of the animals, and not only whether they were euthanized or not, but how the animals left the shelter. Were they adopted? Were they transferred? Was it a return to owner? A return to field? I know many of you are going to already be very familiar with the Million Cat Challenge and programs like Feral Freedom and TNR. So those kinds of programs. And of course, euthanasia and lost and died in shelter or missing, unknown. The goal really needs to be to document as best you can all of the numbers of all of the animals coming in and where they came from and how they left. So when you're talking about incoming animals and disposition, it's even more complicated because you need it broken down by species. If you can get the information by age, that's very helpful to know whether we're talking about large numbers of puppies and kittens versus adults. If you can know the zip code of origin of animals, that can help you pinpoint within the community where there are problems. And especially if you're looking closely at major shelters, it can really help to look at the monthly flow, and I'll give you some examples of that as we go further into this. Additional information that you're going to want to gather, we keep going deeper here, down deeper levels. So talking about the incoming animals, surrender reasons, why animals are given up. And while we all know that you cannot 100% rely upon the information that's given to you by the public when they surrender a pet, it's still helpful information to have, and it can be valuable in terms of beginning to address issues within the community. Length of stay data, how long are animals staying in facilities before they are adopted? Because one very cost-effective way to save lives is to increase that turn to get animals adopted and placed more quickly, and we'll come back to that later. You also would like to know the most common reasons for euthanasia, and if you can get it at that level, it's very helpful to you, because if you're looking at a situation where the majority of animals are euthanized because of space, temperament, health, is it because they're feral, or are there some other reasons, it can help you in formulating solutions to these problems. And we'll talk more about various shelter reporting methods and how you might be able to find that out. But in some cases, the actual data is weak. And so this is, again, a point where having many people engaged in the process, folks who work at area shelters, they can at least give you anecdotal information, which is better than no information in terms of what the challenges are and where resources are most needed. So as we continue to drill down here, I just want to point out two potential pitfalls. One is it's very, very important to identify unique animals. It's very easy to count animals twice when they're transferred from one agency to another if that data is not tracked well or if you are not asking for it. So you want to be sure that that you get the source of the animals. Where did they come from? And animals that are leaving, where were they transferred to a rescue group outside the geographic area or inside? One of the things that makes this process even more interesting is the fact that in our field we do not have a standard statistical reporting methodology. There are many different ideas about it, and there are several more common methods, two of them being Usulamar Accords, which, and Maddie's fund has some great recommendations on developing a community matrix to classify animals, which can be very helpful to you, and is also a worthwhile exercise to go through with your community. And also the National Federation of Humane Societies has a different shelter reporting method. It is helpful to get everyone in the community at least on the same page so that the data starts to look the same. It makes not only this historic work, but it's important to do if it doesn't already exist so that going forward you can track your progress and feel good that you have the best data and really know that the progress is real. So ways that you can look at this, that you can analyze the raw data, is to consider the save rate, the live release rate, and to look at the statistics per 1,000 residents. And this can be done for admissions, shelter admissions, or intake, as some people call it, adoptions, and shelter euthanasia, so that you can compare your community to communities of other sizes and see where you are falling. Those comparisons are helpful, and we will talk more about that as we go along. Each of these methods has various drawbacks and benefits, and so it can be helpful to do all of the calculations for your community, honestly. But if you choose to do only one, it's really important to know what you're getting when you look at that number. And rather than spend a lot of time telling you how to calculate these, I'm going to refer you to a really simple resource for that, and I'll come back to that later and I'll give you information on it, but it's also in your resources for this webinar. And I just had to throw in one of my favorite quotes, which is from Brenda Barnett, the director of LA Animal Services, "Noses in, noses out." And I think there's something about that to me kind of captures our ideal that we ultimately need to know about every animal and how they came in and how they went out. So you're looking for that unvarnished view, and therefore you need unedited data. So you want to get as raw and clear data as you can to work with. Now, further complicating things, and this is of course perhaps an offshoot of the fact that we don't have an industry standard that everybody agrees on for how we're going to gather or report statistics. There is no one repository, so unfortunately you can't just go to one website and find all the information you may wish. But there are several listed here, some that I've already mentioned, that can absolutely help you. And there are also some regional data reports that can be great, and I'm sure this is by no means a comprehensive listing, but two that I'm aware of is the California Sheltering Report, which is very interesting to read, especially if you're looking at doing your own community assessment, and the Denver metro area Metro Animal Coalition. They have a website and blog that's worth looking into. And another great source for many states is the Department of Agriculture or the State Veterinarian's Office. They often do collect data from animal shelters, and it can be helpful to get a hold of it. Some states publish it online, some states do not. So you need to, in some cases, you need to reach out and request the information. So in addition to what I've talked about so far, you're going to want to gather information on the resources at the disposal of each of the agencies within your geographic area. And how you get that depends on the type of organization that we're talking about. For nonprofit organizations, every one of them files an IRS Form 990 every year, and some of them put them on their own website, but most of them can be obtained on GuideStar or Charity Navigator. And also the National Animal Interest Shelter Project, that's the sort of, I guess for lack of a better word, opposition group that publishes a lot of data. Again, they've done the research and it's there. We may as well take advantage of it. Government-funded facilities or government or agencies that have contracts with government to perform services. These agencies almost always have budgets that have to be passed by the governmental body, and so the information is almost always available online. But if not, you can ask for it from the agency, or if you are told you cannot get it, it is definitely available through the Freedom of Information Act. Again, I would always advocate that as a last resort. We want to work with people and maintain good relationships, so it's always nice. Nobody likes you to go over their head if they would have gladly helped you. So it's good to assume that people want the same thing and are going to help you and start there. Another really helpful piece of information is to know the facility capacity and the average occupancy levels. Some shelter data-based systems can easily provide that information, the average occupancy level of the shelter by month, so that you can see how full the shelter is at any given point in time. And failing that, you can always find out the capacity of the shelter, again, by asking the shelter staff for that information. And staffing levels are helpful too, because we'll talk more about them. It's obvious why, but we'll talk about how you can look at staffing levels and determine if they're adequate. So moving on, in addition to the resources, which we just talked about, understanding the programs and services and the goals of these and the results from each of them can be very helpful. Also, understanding the policies that each organization holds, because policy can have a very positive or neutral or negative impact on live release results. So looking at these is very worthwhile, and again, it's so important to be working with the folks who are making, ideally, or at least implementing these policies, so that you ultimately have their buy-in to try to create change. So looking at admissions policies, looking at adoption programs and promotions, volunteer programs, spay-neuter, transport programs into and out of the community, rescue partnerships, foster care programs, the return to owner policies, and return to field of TNR or feral freedom or community cats. There are so many different names that get used, but looking at how feral animals are handled in the facility, microchipping campaigns and efforts within the community. Also pet retention and surrender mitigation programs, helplines, for example, a managed mission or surrender by appointment programs, which we're going to talk about a little bit more shortly, and low-cost veterinary care or pet food assistance that may enable people to keep pets. So what you want to do is really get an understanding of what kinds of services are available and what kinds of policies are in place that are working well in the community, and ultimately get a picture of those that may need consideration or reconsideration. I'm going to hand it back to Lynn.
Now we have our next poll question. So everybody look to their screen and answer on your screen. And the question is, if you were to do a community assessment, what information could be the most challenging for you to obtain? Animal statistics, financial information, shelter policies, public opinion, other, you don't anticipate any problems, or not applicable. So, if you were to do a community assessment, what information could be the most challenging for you to obtain? While you're filling in your answer, I want to remind you that there is a certificate of attendance in the green file widget in the resources at the bottom of your screen. Please download it and print it out, or download it and save it. Also, get your questions in for Bonnie, so we'll have them handy at the end of the presentation. So let's go to our results. Yeah, that's pretty interesting. I would have thought that animal statistics would have been the hardest to get, Bonnie, but actually it's public opinion. Maybe you have some tips for people.
That is very interesting. Yeah, I do. We're going to talk about that in just a few minutes, actually. Yeah, interesting, actually. And hopefully, through the course of the webinar, I'll be able to help you see ways that you'll be able to obtain this information. And if not, please do ask questions, and I'll be happy to try to answer as many as we can at the end, but also via email after the webinar ends. Okay. Continuing on at the level of, we keep drilling down in level of detail here. So again, keep this in mind that you do not have to dig this deep, but depending on how complex your problem is or how many animals you're dealing with, you may need to. So that's why we're covering this here. And certainly it's helpful to look at this if you work for an organization. Within your organization, these kinds of assessments and examining each of these things can be helpful. So policies of individual agencies that can impact the live release rate of animals include, but are hardly limited to, these things. One of them is hours of operation for adoption and redemption. Is it convenient for people who work? How hard is it, are we making it for people to get in to adopt or pick up their pet after their pet has escaped or become lost? What are the legal hold periods? And I don't think you can necessarily assume that longer is better. There are variables in there. And rescue and transfer policies, pet adoption screening and fees. How difficult is it to adopt a pet? How pricey is it? And there are other webinars that talk a lot about this, but I think it's something that we need to look at as we look at solutions to the challenges in our community. So you'll want to know what those policies are at all the major adoption entities in your community. Animal shelter, animal selection and placement policies. So among the animals in the shelter, which are selected to be put up for adoption, for example. Behavior evaluations, are they done? Which one is done, and are they done by trained staff? The lag time between adoption and taking pets home. This is one that I find is often missed, that the pet is adopted, but the pet is required to be held in the shelter, and the reasons vary from, well, they just vary a great deal. So you really need to delve into why. Not only is there one, is there a lag time, but why is there a lag time, and what would the solution be that could speed that up? Trap new return programs, which we've talked about, and return to field policies. And of course, return to owner. Are animals returned to owner in the field? Is there follow-up on IDs? Are there fees, and are they excessive? All of these things are factors that you need to look at in order to see why maybe some of the data. And again, you may not have to look at everything, because if you can already see that a particular area is going really well, then that may not be the area emphasize in terms of drilling down. But the challenge areas, you are going to want to drill down into the policies behind the way things work. Another important aspect is looking at your community's ordinances and codes that exist. So this would mean reviewing all of the local and state statutes. Again, you don't have to do this all yourself. Ideally, if you can work with a team of people, maybe you can get a volunteer lawyer who would love to gather this information for you. There's also almost certainly someone in the community in the Animal Services Department who has a good grasp of these things that can talk you through them, which can be very helpful, again, with engaging more people in this process. But the kinds of codes you're going to want to pay attention to, again, not limited to, but definitely including these things that I have listed here: shelter release of animals, the mandatory minimum hold periods, spay-neuter requirements, standards of care for shelters, mandatory spay-neuter laws, codes that affect feral cats and TNR, animal bite and quarantine policies, dangerous animal laws, pet limit laws, license fees, and if these include differentials for spayed and neutered pets, the penalties, compliance rates. There is some information and resources that I want to mention now because I don't know how I don't go that much more deeply into this aspect of things, but there's a white paper by Mitch Schneider that is in the resources that can be very helpful in examining these policies for your community and making recommendations for things that could improve. And then, as I already mentioned, impound fees and policies related to that. So now we're going to sort of broaden back and take a step back for a second from delving into all the intricacies of the animal shelters and the animal shelters policies, and we're going to look at the community at large. It's really important to know your population of the geographic area you've selected, and to know trends. Is it dropping or increasing? The data about poverty levels in your community, it's important to know. It impacts animals. The economic trends and conditions in the community. You can also obtain from Animal Services calls for services by type. So these are the calls that come in requesting assistance from the public for an animal control officer. And again, that data is tracked by most agencies, and it can be really helpful, especially since it can provide zip code data for where issues are. Crime reports are available that you can obtain for animal-related issues. Again, how deeply you delve into this is going to depend on the animal data you have and where you suspect the problems are. You don't want to spend a lot of time looking at details that probably are not going to net a big result in your community, at least not early on. Incoming animal data, you want that, as we mentioned before, by zip code and species. Dog license data, animal-related business licenses. These can be obtained in most cities so that you can determine what parts of the community are well served and what parts of the community are underserved. Dog parks, where they exist in the community, and you can use mapping programs to look at this kind of data that can make it very helpful to see where there are segments of the community that need more help or more attention, and this can help shelters focus resources. And of course, estimates of community and feral cat populations, and you know where those are. Often, again, engaging more people. Someone in the community knows where they are, and it's either something you can find from calls for service or by talking to the TNR group and feral cat groups in your community. This is one of the areas where you all said you thought would be the greatest challenge, and I can see that it can be. However, sometimes it doesn't have to be that difficult, I guess is what I'm trying to say here. You can look for existing studies and research, and there are some examples of these provided in the resources for this webinar that you can take a look at. But you can also gather this data yourself. And again, this would be a project that I would delegate to somebody on the team. Thanks to SurveyMonkey, which is a great website, you can create surveys, and you could use some of the questions that are asked in the survey models that have been provided for you in the resource section here, so that you don't have to necessarily figure out what questions to ask yourself. SurveyMonkey is free, and it's a great resource for creating surveys, and you can help get the word out. Again, the more partners you have, the better in terms of getting the word out. But Facebook and social media is very valuable, and also the news media. If you can engage people, it does depend on the size of your media market. The larger the media market, the harder it is to get coverage. But if you can find an animal lover who will help you get the word out that you're trying to gather public opinion about pets, animal shelters, pet adoption, whatever your primary focus is, really just one media person helping you push that out there, be it a radio personality or someone who's willing to interview you, it can make a huge difference, and you can get a pretty broad response pretty quickly. Another critical aspect of this for me is really having a benchmark to compare your community. And there are several different ways you can do this. One that I like is the per 1,000. So if you look at adoptions, shelter admission or intake, and euthanasia by this, how many per 1,000 residents of your community, you can run that same number fairly easily for other communities and make a comparison. And again, for demographic data, you can try to find cities that are similar. I had recently done this for Las Vegas and identified several other cities around the country that are similar in terms of animal intake, and in terms of population, and also in terms of poverty level. And so if you find even 2 or 3 other cities that are similar to yours, it makes a very valuable comparison, and one that can be compelling for people who may not be into all the warm and fuzzies, but that understand those kinds of comparisons, public officials in particular. Now, we're going to start to talk further. I already sort of launched into it, but analyzing the data that you have gathered. Again, I've already mentioned several of these several times, but looking at your data in as many different ways as it's feasible for you to do, I think can be very helpful. And one that I have not mentioned is cost per animal saved. I think that can be a valuable number to take a look at, and that you can also compare, benchmark with other communities to see how you are doing. Taking a look at the assets available is very important, so you want to get that financial data. Oftentimes, it's easy to be very critical of the work being done in a municipal facility without understanding that they're radically underfunded. And so we'll talk more about that. And there are multiple ways to remedy that, be it a friends group that raises resources or working with the government to get more assets directed to toward animal services. But anyway, that comes further down. And again, I already mentioned the similar or nearby communities also helped. And I have a couple of examples of this kind of comparison that I will share with you shortly. Again, you want to, a real reason to gather a team and not try to do this alone or just with 1 or 2 people or just one organization is to gather people with different skills. And there are people who love analyzing data and are very good at it. And folks who can help you out with mapping programs and charts and graphs and trend identification can really help the impact that your project has beyond just your immediate group. It can really help you to package the information so that you can share it with others, make it easy to understand, and very visual, which really matters. So back to analyzing the data here. You want to delve into areas where more information will provide a greater insight into opportunities. So two that I find consistently are helpful is to really dig in and understand the primary reasons why animals are entering shelters in your community and the primary reasons why animals are euthanized in shelters. However, those may not be the only ones in your community. So you want to think critically about it. And again, this is where the team approach helps, because different people will see things differently and help encourage insights. Assessing the challenges and opportunities is best done through a framework, especially if you are working with a task force or a team. And so developing some, or better yet, using an existing framework can really help you out. Everyone, or many people, are familiar with the SWOT analysis, where you look together at the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, and that is as they relate to achieving your goals of saving more lives. Another analysis is the PEST analysis, looking at political, economic, social, and technological factors. And I think we tend not to think about things in this way in our field, but it can, so therefore, looking at it this way can lend insights that you might miss otherwise. A benefit to using a structure like one of these is that it gives you a chance, ideally, to examine all the facts without assigning blame, and at the same time, really helping to build a climate of accountability within your community. And with that, I'm going to hand it back to Lynn.
Yes, and here's another poll question. What terminology do you think will work best in your community to gain converts and rally support? Would that term be no-kill, life-saving or saving lives, achieving a 90% save rate, saving them all, getting to zero, or other? So what terminology do you think will work best in your community to gain converts and rally support? Please answer on your screen. And we'll hurry on through to the results. Life-saving and saving lives, that seems to be the top-notch one. Bonnie?
Very cool, yeah.
Yeah, very nice.
Yeah, that's great. I want to bring this up because little things can really mean a lot, and most especially when it comes to words, and not only words, but also the tone with which we deliver things and discuss things can make a huge difference in terms of how they're received. So it's important to think about this and use the terminology that is going to be most effective in your community. For me, this is important because, as far as I'm concerned, a rose by any other name would smell as sweet. So whether you want to call it, no more homeless pets, or no-kill, or life-saving community, however you think is going to win converts and garner support, that is important. Now, I would say that just because a term might make a few people unhappy doesn't mean it's necessarily bad. Sometimes things that create excitement are a little annoying to some people. However, I think you want to avoid alienating people. So this is something that you need to brainstorm and discuss within your community group, within your team there that's going to be doing this assessment, and make a decision that's going to have the best possible results. In some communities where this may be already a very volatile issue, I think really looking for a professional facilitator to help you through it may not be a bad thing. to do, and sometimes agreeing to use different terminologies for different audiences can even be a solution. But in any case, it is important, and so I wanted to bring it up as part of the discussion here. Assessing challenges and opportunities. So we've gathered a lot of data here, and what do we do with it all? The goal is to identify recurring themes, consider possible courses of action, and explore the results or the impact that you could expect from these different courses of action. Identify from that consideration, hopefully you can identify the most impactful actions, and then identify questions that you need to answer in order to be sure that your assumptions are right and to be sure that you are not overlooking something. So it would be unusual, I think, to have a really crystal clear picture. I think usually you want to go back and question assumptions and make sure that you've got the right data there. The goal is to be both effective in our work and efficient. And I think we've all seen organizations that are effective in that they're doing efficient, I should say, in that they're doing things right or quickly. And then there's effectiveness, which for us is going to be measured in terms of lives saved. And the goal is to do both in our community, and that can be helpful to keep in mind as you're developing your solutions. So the tips for creating your plan, because this is where we're at now. We've gathered all the data, we've looked for the trends and identified them, we've considered which things could lead to the greatest life-saving impact, and now we really need to begin to sort of buckle down and set objectives. And ideally, the team that you're working with has by now been working together a while, so trust grows, and we are able to hopefully come up with some shared goals that everyone can agree to work to. And it may be that your goal is to hit a percentage live release rate, or to increase adoptions, reduce admissions, reduce shelter euthanasias by a certain amount. It could be something more general is going to be best for your community. Perhaps the goal is saving all the healthy and treatable animals, and that actually is pretty specific in a way, but it may not have a set number attached to it. So here we are, we're working on our plan, and one of the keys here is going to be identifying strategies to overcome the obstacles and maximize the opportunities. So the strategies that you consider need to be a strategy that is going to fit both for the data you've found, what you've learned, where you see the greatest impact, and your community in terms of getting the buy-in and support to make it happen. I'm a firm believer that there is not one way only to do something. There are usually multiple ways to succeed at any task. So being flexible, as I mentioned before, is really important. So it could be, and these are just some of the common approaches that are out there that you could choose to model. They've been proven to work in other places, and they may work for you. The targeted spay-neuter approach, I think Target Zero talks about that a great deal. Programmatic formula, where you execute a prescribed set of programs. This is sort of the no-kill solutions approach. I had the opportunity to work with the UC Davis folks, Kate Hurley, on an assessment, and really was very impressed with their method, which Kate Hurley talks about as being the three-legged stool, and you really need to balance these three things, which are intake of animals, the shelter flow, the flow of the animals through the shelter, and the positive outcomes in order to succeed. And then some people take a sort of streamlined approach to that, and their goal is to increase the live outflow of animals and reduce the intake of animals. So you can adopt one of these high-level strategies, or you could devise a custom one for your community. I'm sure we have not yet discovered all the approaches that can be taken, and so I think there's still plenty of room in our field for innovation, and I hope that some of you will go on to develop still new and other ways to achieve our big goal. Everything, for me, one of my favorite terms is the life-saving impact test, and it's something that we look at programs when I work with shelters, and something that I had applied at Nevada Humane Society is really giving everything a hard look and ensuring that where we are putting our effort and energy, whatever strategy you employ, it really needs to be tied to a life-saving result to get the level of impact that you are hoping. Okay, more here on strategies to overcome obstacles and make the most of the opportunities at your disposal. I highly recommend that you take the time to research programs that have worked well in other places, because while there are probably an endless number of solutions, we don't really always have time to reinvent the wheel, and there's a lot of great stuff out there. Just the number of webinars that are available through Maddie's Institute could provide you with a ton of great information, and there are lots of other good resources out there as well. I have a list of several of these programs that you can easily find information on out there, and a few that I'm going to delve into more closely. One of them that I'm going to talk about in just a moment is increasing pet adoptions. And the reason I want to focus on that is because I find that there is not always a deep level of belief that this can be done, and I want to talk about that. Pet retention and surrender mitigation programs. Again, there's information on this in the resources, and if there are questions, I'm happy to deal with those. Managed admissions, I actually do have a little bit more on this in here as well. Improving shelter care and flow in order to save more lives. Accessible or targeted spay-neuter, and I actually do see those as two different approaches, and I think in different communities they may have different effects. TNR, return to field, or shelter neuter return, whatever you want to call it, where feral cats are not euthanized but returned. Return to owner policies, pet ID, and reunification programs. So these are real efforts to increase that return to owner rate. Partnerships between agencies and also with businesses in the community. Expanding foster care capacity and kitten nurseries. I know there's a huge trend towards kitten nurseries, but I actually think some of that is based on our lack of belief that we can make functional foster care programs. I think you can argue that it's best for kittens to be raised in a home environment rather than a kitten nursery. And I think it's one of those areas where you need to look at which one will work best for you. But I really urge people not to give up on foster care as a real incredible life-saving opportunity. Also, some communities that I've talked to are moving in the direction of creating an RFP for animal services that includes hitting life-saving benchmarks. And there are even groups that have set out to change animal services by taking it over. For example, Kansas City Pet Project is an excellent example to look at, as is Lifeline Animal Project, which now runs Fulton County and DeKalb County Animal Services in the Atlanta area. Both are very inspiring examples, and again, you don't necessarily have to reinvent the wheel. You can work on what those folks did. And of course, there are endless new and emerging developments out there, which is why you have to keep your ear to the ground and watch for stuff that's coming up, because new exciting programs are being developed all the time. With that, I'm going to hand this back to Lynn.
Hey, okay, we have our next poll question. First, I want to address everybody out there in webcast land, especially you folks on the East Coast. We've just passed the 10 o'clock hour there. We may run a little long tonight with getting through all of this great material, but please bear with us, and you'll learn a lot. If we can't get to all the questions, perhaps we can get a Q&A document put up on our website after the event. So stick with us,
Sure.
and here's your next poll question. Where do you see your community's greatest opportunity for increasing life-saving? Increasing adoptions? Reducing intake admission? Shelter-neuter return or feral freedom program? Spay-neuter? Not sure? Please submit your answer on the screen. Where do you see your community's greatest opportunity for increased life-saving? And let's look at the results. And I'm not surprised with those answers, especially with spay-neuter being the top one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's very interesting. It's interesting how many are in close alignment there, too. Well, that's a great lead into the next place I'm going to go here, because I want to talk about pet adoption, because I really believe in every community we have not yet begun to maximize potential pet adoption, and there's opportunity everywhere. One place that you can look to help convince people of this is the 2009 study from the Shelter Pet Project, which Maddie's Fund and HSUS funded, that reported that 17 million American households were planning to acquire a pet within the next year. So that tells us that we don't really have a problem with homes, we have a problem with marketing and reaching people. I talk a lot about benchmarking, and I think this is an area that's critically important. You really need to look at the adoptions per 1,000 residents for your community and compare them to the best communities in the country, because those are the communities that have really maximized marketing and really engaged the community in life-saving through pet adoption. So you all can read the numbers here. I think that it's a great place to start a discussion, is looking at where you fall in this. In Virginia, I had done this for an organization in Virginia and compared shelters. This information was easily pulled on the internet, and I think you can see the potential there. If you look at the county at the bottom, I guess you could say, gee, that's really a shame that it's not very good, but it shows you the tremendous opportunity that exists there in that community to save more lives. So doing a simple comparison like this can be very impactful to share with people. Also, if you look at the American Pet Product Manufacturers Association, they do a survey and talking about where to obtain public perception or public opinion information. That can be a valuable source. Looking at where people obtain pets, 20% of dog owners obtain their pets from a shelter. I think that tells us that we've got a huge opportunity. Meanwhile, 83% of the people have already spayed or neutered their own dogs. So it shows me that I need to put my resources into adoption. That's what I take away from that. And similarly, again, you can take a look at the same issue here with cats. We have a huge opportunity with good marketing, solid marketing, to put more animals, more cats and dogs into homes. This is a great little chart that you can produce for your community as well. This is Charlottesville Albemarle SPCA in Virginia, and they pulled this data together, which you can certainly come back and look at more closely later. It shows that dog intake and adoption is not cyclical, and that's important because it's very cyclical for cats. And what they were able to prove there was that if they could keep these cats, kittens mostly, coming in the middle of the summer alive, they could save their lives because they were able to adopt them once things tipped the other way in November, December, January, February, and March. So running numbers like this can, again, show you how, say, a foster care program can help you fill this gap and replace euthanasia for cats, as can a good return to field program in some cases. Demonstrating the value of pet adoptions. I'm going to try to move quickly because I want to have time for your questions. Everybody doesn't come at this from a place of heart necessarily, though certainly some officials do. So I was especially pleased to see this, which was provided to me by Scott Trebetowski, formerly of Jacksonville Animal Care and Protective Services. He's now moved on to another Florida community. But he did this great little calculation, which you can look at more yourself, and it talks about annual costs and then costs to pet owners over a period of life expectancy of a dog or cat in terms of the economic impact and the economic benefit to the community. So Scott has actually proven that pet adoptions is something worth investing in and believing in and focusing on in your community because it's good for the economy of the community. And these are excellent slides that you can look at closely, duplicate for your community, and use. I know that's what I did in Reno, and these are the slides that I created for Nevada Humane Society and used to speak to the county commission and city councils there about the economic benefit of what we did, the service that we were providing to the community. And, you know, people sit up and take notice when you talk about the economic impact of your work in terms of literally millions of dollars for the local economy. In addition to, of course, the economic benefit, we want to be sure that we're talking about the other benefits, the social benefits to children, families, single people, seniors. There are lots of information available on that. I have a lot of that I'd be happy to provide to anybody who needs it. And of course, it really, pet adoption helps all of us in a very easy way to fulfill our life-saving mission. I'm not going to spend much time on this, but if you have not seen it, you really need to watch Kate Hurley's webinar, and I believe there are actually several more upcoming, so I'm just going to breeze over this part. Scott, again, comes to our aid with some excellent data here on the economic benefits of a community cat program that can help you gain support for it as well. Boosting the return to owner rate. Again, I want to go past this very quickly, but I will refer you to the great white paper by Mitch Snyder that is in the resources section, and I'll answer questions about it. But it is an area that can have a very substantial impact, and there are a few communities now that are showing return to owner rates. I know at Washoe County it was about 65% for dogs, and there are some that are even better than that now. So there is huge opportunity in that area. We are, for the sake of time, going to, Lynn, should we skip this video? What do you think?
Yes, whatever you'd like, Bonnie.
Okay, we're going to skip it, but you can all come back and watch it. It's Animal Humane of New Mexico. They implemented a surrender by appointment video, and we don't really have time to watch it because it's about 4 minutes, but it's excellent, and I really hope that you will watch it because they don't just bring this on the community. They really sell it to the community, and they explain how it can save more lives. And I know that that was something that over time we did at Nevada Humane Society as well. And you can really also explain it in terms of improved customer service, which it absolutely does, as well as care for the animals. And these are the statistics that Animal Humane Society provided after their initial year on this new program, and they really do help you to sit up and take notice for the potential benefits. So I'm going to hand this back to Lynn.
And we have another poll question here. Could admissions by appointment work in your community? Yes, it's happening already. Maybe we plan to move in that direction. Probably, but buy-in from decision makers could be challenging. Doubt it or don't know? Please submit your answers. And by the way, this webcast will be available on demand, and you can watch the video that we just skipped over on demand, and that is also free, just like our live webcast. And here's our results. So we're going to have problems with decision makers, I think.
Well, and that great video can really help you out a lot. And I think there are some other arguments to be made too. So if people have questions about that, if you submit them, I'll absolutely answer them by email, and I think I can help you out with selling that to people. Looking at funding for animal services, just to cut to the chase, you really need to know if your animal services agency is underfunded. And here are some recommendations, $7 to $9 per capita annually. And this is a recommendation of the International City County Management Association and NACA. So that can be very helpful. One thing you absolutely do not want is to have funding for animal services based on the number of animals that are impounded. That is counterproductive. You really want it based on the population served. So we are going to skip over a lot of this stuff because you can come back and look at it. But really, you know, looking at the number of animals handled in your community, how many are coming in? Is your intake, is it high, and is there something you can do about that? Again, looking at euthanasia rates, look at these. There are benchmarks provided here that you can use to share with decision makers and to influence the public to help you achieve your goals. I have got to recommend this as the greatest resource. If you don't read anything else, take a look at this handout from the National Federation of Humane Societies. There's a link to it provided in the resources. It tells you how to calculate these things and what the benefits of each of them are. So check it out. It will really help you to get your numbers right, and it's very simple even for people who are not intense on the whole math thing. One tip I've got to share is when you are doing your plan and when you are setting your goals, really it's important to take on something big and exciting, because it's the only way that you are ever going to engage the public to the level that you need to engage them. So if you set a wimpy goal or a goal that isn't very inspiring, you're going to really struggle with achieving it. Where if you set a big goal, a goal that scares you a little bit, that's challenging, you will find that the support is going to come a whole lot more easily from the public. And it has a lot of benefits. It gets stakeholders out of thinking too small, and it really creates a sense of urgency. So think about, what does success really look like? And that's what you want to define as your big goal. Once you have your big goal, you're going to want to devise steps and sub-goals. And that's where things like the, SMART, having goals that are specific, motivational. I know sometimes people say measurable, and they do have to be measurable, but the motivational part cannot be underestimated. So when I found this read on the SMART thing, I really liked it. It helps to remind us that these goals are not just for us. They're about winning the entire community over and gaining their help. Creating an action plan, again, you just want to think through potential unintended consequences, and sometimes these can be difficult to predict, but you don't want to be frozen either analyzing things, that old analysis paralysis thing. We want to avoid that. We need to move, and so I am a fan of the create and adjust philosophy. So you create it or you do it, and then you adjust it as you go along. So being flexible and being a little tolerant of things happening and realizing, well, maybe we should do it this way, and tweaking things and improving them moves things a lot more quickly than waiting until you have every perfect thing lined up. That just is not reality. And so you need to remain flexible. And one of the other key tips I would offer is it's critically important to assign tasks and due dates to individuals. not to groups, not to committees or departments, but to a very specific person. That is really the only way to ensure that things get done, because accountability is really a role, it has to fall onto one person. I'm going to hand this back to Lynn.
And this is our last poll for the evening, and we will have some time for questions, so stay with us. What do you see as the single greatest challenge to saving more lives in your community? Limited resources, attitudes of some shelter leadership, lack of goals and clear strategy, issues within the community, nothing really, or you don't know. So what do you see as the single greatest challenge to saving more lives in your community? Let's look at the results. Very interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting. Well, hopefully what you learned tonight can help you find a way, and I'll be happy to try to answer specific challenges or questions you have via email. So don't hesitate to get in touch with those if I don't address them here. This most critical part really is engaging the community, and in lots of ways that can help overcome resistance of virtually any kind, because ultimately anyone who's in charge of anything really ends up answering to the community at large, public officials, people who run animal shelters, all of us. And so it's really incumbent on the leader of this effort to create and communicate an inspiring vision. I once heard a consultant say that change happens only when the pain of change is perceived as less than the pain of maintaining the status quo. And one of the best ways, this person recommended, to overcome that was to create an inspiring vision, because if people have a place to go to, something that looks much better, it can really help motivate change. As humans, we're a little bit like cats. We don't like change very much. So we really do need motivation, and that's part of leadership, is to provide that that motivation. And it really requires this inspiring vision, which gets us back to that big, hairy, audacious goal, and finding a way to share that with people. It's really critically important that we think about how we come across to people. When you think about Charlie Brown's teacher and how, Charlie Brown just hears wah, wah, wah. He doesn't hear whatever it is the teacher is actually trying to say. And unfortunately, I think that all too often happens with us in animal welfare. We are, lecturing people or admonishing them to be responsible. We're trying to educate them, and really nobody wants to be educated that way or have a finger wagged in their face, even if that's not what you're actually doing. If it comes across as condescending, people are going to tune us out. So it's just critically important to talk about with the public about our work in terms of the really fun and rewarding aspect of saving lives, of adopting a pet. We have to let go of some of the responsible talk that we like to say, be a responsible pet owner. Well, at best it's boring, and at worst it really comes across as condescending. And to engage with the community, we need to let that go and focus on enthusiasm for the goal and enthusiasm for pets and animals and how wonderful they are in our lives. So anyway, back to the big picture. We've developed this plan based on all of our research. We have goals. As you go along, it's really important, as I said, to remain flexible and make adjustments, but it requires looking at the progress. So monitoring how we're doing becomes an ongoing part of what we do. So with that, I'm going to hand things back to Lynn. I'm really excited about all of your future plans and hope that you'll keep in touch with me on them. I'd love to hear how things are going for you. So anyway, Lynn, back to you.
Okay, well, there's Bonnie's email address right on the screen in front of you. Just jot it down. We'll be going back and forth to it throughout the question and answer period. So let's take our first question. And it is, we are trying to address all of these issues, but are having difficulty to change policies to better address issues with the powers that be. Any suggestions?
Well, that's without knowing a lot more. I guess I would say you really have to pick your hits. You have to look at what is going to have the biggest life-saving impact in your community and seek to focus efforts and obtain change there, because one success begets more successes. So that would be one strategy. Another is to really engage the public at large, the community, in what they want. And that can be very persuasive to many different kinds of people in terms of moving things forward. But without knowing more about your community, it's a little hard to say if that information is helpful. So feel free to email me.
All right. So here's the next question, Bonnie. Are there templates available for data capturing specifically for what you have discussed this evening? So
yes.
Are there
yes.
templates?
The SLMA Accords has a template. Maddie's Fund, in fact, has a template that you can use that's very helpful for gathering data on organizations, and you can go to their website and take a look at examples of other communities' data. And, oh goodness, I'm totally drawing a blank, but it was the other model I listed for national, I can't think of it. I'm so sorry. I'm just drawing a blank there. But it was in the PowerPoint, and I can get it for you and share it with you. That also has a template and a form that you can use that can be very helpful. I think it was the
National Federation of Humane Societies?
Yes, thank you. That's it, exactly.
Yes.
Thanks, Lynn.
Yes. Okay, sure. Okay, let's take the next question. Surrender by appointment, wouldn't that increase the number of animals abandoned loose in the community?
Well, it might seem that way, but it doesn't seem to be the case in communities that have implemented it. And of course, like everything, you really want to look at your community and devise a plan that's going to work well for you, and mostly for the animals in your community. But in fact, what they've noticed is that it really is about a community shift about how we think of animals. And animals are, we all say, we're all happy to tell people that they shouldn't be disposable. Yet we kind of facilitate their disposability by saying we're open all the time, just come on in and dump them here and we won't even ask you any questions. I think that it's a move, and it may be something you need to do progressively. I will say it isn't the thing we did on day one in Reno and in Washoe County, but it was a very natural step at some point in the process. So I think it really bears looking at. I'd recommend that you watch the video for Animal Humane, and I'm certainly happy to share more information on what we did in Washoe County. But generally, communities that adopt it are seeing the opposite. They're not seeing an increase in animal abandonment. And I remember people telling me that that's what would happen when we closed drop boxes. Someone told me we would be wading through animals on the way into the shelter, but that never happened when the drop box was closed. So it's part of moving our community in the direction we want to see, which is where people really have a bond with their pets and where they really do take responsibility for their animals. It's enabling them to do the right thing, perhaps, instead of making it so very easy to do the wrong thing. So anyway, it probably bears more discussion than that, and I would be happy to share more thoughts on it via email later.
That was a good answer. Here's the next one. Did you mention a sample community survey on SurveyMonkey? I'm looking for a sample, but I have not found any, and really need an example to understand some good questions. Thanks.
Good point. No, it's not there, but it's in the resources. There are a few different community surveys. One that I'm almost certain I included was one that was funded by Maddie's Fund. It was done by UNR and the SPCA of Northern Nevada. That has survey questions in it that will probably be very helpful to you, that you could model your survey on. also, Allies did a survey of people's opinions on, it was actually done by Pew Research, and I can send you that, or you can find it online, and it was public opinion on outdoor cats or something like that. But again, I can provide that to you or give it to Lynn to add to the resources. Both of them have actual questions, and that will help you a lot.
Excellent. And these resources will be available on our website after this event, so they'll also be there. Here's another question. What exactly is a mapping program, and where can mapping programs be found?
Microsoft has a mapping program, and for some reason, again, I'm drawing a blank. I'm sure lots of you know what it is. If you work for a shelter or volunteer for a shelter there, or any nonprofit, TechSoup has very low-cost programs. I know we have purchased it at Nevada Humane Society and used it internally to track where feral cat colonies are, because that way you know where you can return a cat to a colony, through the mapping program. So, God, I can't think of the name of the Microsoft mapping program, but it's probably the easiest one to use and very intuitive. I'm so sorry. I can look it up and let you know.
Probably Google mapping programs. We could find them like that. Right.
That would work, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, good. Well, we'll take one more question here, Bonnie, and then we'll close for the evening. So this is our last question. Would a type of stakeholder meeting be helpful in getting the pulse of the community?
I think so. I do think that you want to be sure that you can plan the meeting in such a way that it's going to be positive and not alienating to people who you want to be on your side. But I think it is a great idea, absolutely.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Bonnie. This has been very informative. That's the end of our event this evening. We want to thank all of you for your time tonight. We invite you to take a few minutes to complete our survey. Your feedback is important to us. Click on the link on your screen. If for some reason you don't see the link, it is also in the resource file at the bottom of your screen. And the link will also be mailed to you in a few days. We hope you check out the resources in the widget. But if not, we'll be emailing the links to you, and remember to print and save your certificate of attendance. This webcast will be available on demand within a week, and we hope that you'll share this presentation on your social sites. Join us during the month of April and the first week of May for 5 webcasts that will change the sheltering world. The Million Cat Challenge, the 5 key initiatives that make it work, and how they can work for your organization. For more information, go to our website at www.maddiesinstitute.org. Thanks again for being here with us this evening. Good night, everyone.